The streets of Baerlon were abandoned at that hour of the night. Only a few faint glimmers here and there escaped tightly closed shutters, and the light of the moon in its last quarter waxed and waned with the wind-driven clouds. Now and again a dog barked as they passed an alleyway, but no other sound disturbed the night except their horses' hooves and the wind whistling across the rooftops. The riders held an even deeper silence, huddled in their cloaks and their own thoughts. The warder led the way, as usual, with Moraine and Egwene close behind. Nynaeve kept near the girl, and the others brought up the rear in a tight cluster. Lan kept the horses moving at a brisk walk. Rand watched the streets around them warily, and he noticed his friends doing the same. Shifting moon shadows recalled the shadows at the end of the hall, the way they had seemed to reach out to the fade. An occasional noise in the distance, like a barrel toppling or a dog barking, jerked every head around. Slowly, bit by bit, as they made their way through the town, they all bunched their horses closer to Lan's black stallion and Moraine's white mare. At the Camelin gate, Lan dismounted and hammered with his fist on the door of a small square stone building squatting against the wall. A weary watchman appeared, rubbing sleepily at his face. As Lan spoke, his sleepiness vanished, and he stared past the warder to the others.
"You want to leave?" he exclaimed. "Now? In the night? You must be mad."
"Unless there is some order from the governor that prohibits our leaving," Moraine said. She had dismounted as well, but she stayed back from the door, out of the light that spilled into the dark street.
"Not exactly, mistress."
The watchman peered at her, frowning as he tried to make out her face.
"But the gates stay shut from sundown to sunup. No one to come in except in daylight. That's the order. Anyway, there are wolves out there. Killed a dozen cows in the last week. Could kill a man just as easy."
"No one to come in, but nothing about leaving," Moraine said, as if that settled the matter. "You see? We are not asking you to disobey the governor." Lan pressed something into the watchman's hand. "For your trouble," he murmured.
"I suppose," the watchman said slowly.
He glanced at his hand. Gold glinted before he hastily stuffed it in his pocket.
"I suppose leaving wasn't mentioned at that. Just a minute."
He stuck his head back inside.
"Dar, get out here and help me open the gate. There's people want to leave. Don't argue, just do it."
Two more of the watch appeared from inside, stopping to stare in sleepy surprise at the party of 8 waiting to leave. Under the first watchman's urgings, they shuffled over to heave at the big wheel that raised the thick bar across the gates, then turned their efforts to cranking the gates open. The crank and ratchet made a rapid clicking sound, but the well-oiled gates swung outward silently. Before they were even a quarter open, though, a cold voice spoke out of the darkness.
"What is this? Are these gates not ordered closed until sunrise?"
5 white-cloaked men walked into the light from the guardhouse door. Their cowls were drawn up to hide their faces, but each man rested his hand on his sword, and the golden suns on their left breasts were a plain announcement of who they were. Matt muttered under his breath. The watchmen stopped their cranking and exchanged uneasy looks.
"This is none of your affair,"
the first watchman said belligerently. 5 white hoods turned to regard him, and he finished in a weaker tone.
"The children hold no sway here. The governor—"
"The children of the light," the white-cloaked man, who had first spoken, said softly, "hold sway wherever men walk in the light. Only where the shadow of the Dark One reigns are the children denied." "Yes?" He swung his hood from the watchman to Lan, then suddenly gave the warder a second, more wary look. The warder had not moved. In fact, he seemed completely at ease. But not many people could look at the children so uncaringly. Lan's stony face could as well have been looking at a bootblack. When the white cloak spoke again, he sounded suspicious. "What kind of people want to leave town walls in the night during times like these? With wolves stalking the darkness and the Dark One's handiwork seen flying over the town." He eyed the braided leather band that crossed Lan's forehead and held his long hair back. "A northerner, yes?" Rand hunched lower in his saddle. "A Drakkar." It had to be that, unless the man just named anything he did not understand as the Dark One's handiwork. With the fate at the Stag and Lion, he should have expected a Drakkar, but at the moment he was hardly thinking about it. He thought he recognized the Whitecloak's voice. "Travelers," Lan replied calmly, "of no interest to you or yours. Everyone is of interest to the Children of the Light." Lan shook his head slightly. "Are you really after more trouble with the governor? He has limited your numbers in town, even had you followed. What will he do when he discovers you harassing honest citizens at his gates?" He turned to the watchman. "Why have you stopped?" They hesitated, put their hands back on the crank, then hesitated again when the Whitecloak spoke. "The governor does not know what happens under his nose. There is evil he does not see or smell, but the Children of the Light see." The watchmen looked at one another, their hands opened and closed as if regretting the spears left inside the guardhouse. "The Children of the Light smell the evil." The Whitecloak's eyes turned to the people on horseback. "We smell it and root it out, wherever it is found." Rand tried to make himself even smaller, but the movement drew the man's attention. "What have we here? Someone who does not wish to be seen? What do you—" "Ah!" The man brushed back the hood of his white cloak, and Rand was looking at the face he had known would be there. Bornhold nodded with obvious satisfaction. "Clearly, watchman, I have saved you from a great disaster. These are dark friends you were about to help escape from the light. You should be reported to your governor for discipline, or perhaps given to the questioners to discover your true intent this night." He paused, eyeing the watchman's fear. It seemed to have no effect on him. "You would not wish that, no? Instead, I will take these ruffians to our camp that they may be questioned in the light. Instead of you, yes?" "You will take me to your camp, Whitecloak." Moraine's voice came suddenly from every direction at once. She had moved back into the night at the children's approach, and shadows clumped around her. "You will question me?" Darkness wreathed her as she took a step forward. It made her seem taller. "You will bar my way?" Another step, and Rand gasped. She was taller, her head level with his, where he sat on the gray's back. Shadows clung about her face like thunderclouds. "Aes Sedai!" Bornhold shouted, and 5 swords flashed from their sheaths. "Die!" The other 4 hesitated, but he slashed at her in the same motion that cleared his sword. Rand cried out as Moraine's staff rose to intercept the blade. That delicately carved wood could not possibly stop hard-swung steel.
End of Disc 8.
Rand cried out as Moraine's staff rose to intercept the blade. That delicately carved wood could not possibly stop hard-swung steel. Sword met staff, and sparks sprayed in a fountain, a hissing roar hurling Bornhold back into his white-cloaked companions. All 5 went down in a heap. Tendrils of smoke rose from Bornhold's sword on the ground beside him, blade bent at a right angle, where it had melted almost in 2. "You dare attack me?" Moraine's voice roared like a whirlwind. Shadows spun in on her, draped her like a hooded cloak. She loomed as high as the town wall. Her eyes glared down, a giant staring at insects. "Go!" Lan shouted. In one lightning move, he snatched the reins of Moraine's mare and leaped into his own saddle. "Now!" he commanded. His shoulders brushed either gate as his stallion tore through the narrow opening like a flung stone. For a moment, Rand remained frozen, staring. Moraine's head and shoulders stood above the wall now. Watchmen and children alike cowered away from her, huddling with their backs against the front of the guardhouse. The Aes Sedai's face was lost in the night, but her eyes, as big as full moons, shone with impatience as well as anger when they touched him. Swallowing hard, he booted Cloud in the ribs and galloped after the others. 50 paces from the wall, Lan drew them up, and Rand looked back. Moraine's shadowed shape towered high over the log palisade, head and shoulders a deeper darkness against the night sky, surrounded by a silver nimbus from the hidden moon. As he watched, mouth hanging open, the Aes Sedai stepped over the wall. The gates began swinging shut frantically. As soon as her feet were on the ground outside, she was suddenly her normal size again.
"Hold the gates!"
An unsteady voice shouted inside the wall. Wren thought it was Bornhold.
"We must pursue them and take them!"
But the watchman did not slow the pace of closing. The gates slammed shut, and moments later the bar crashed into place, sealing them. Maybe some of those other white cloaks aren't as eager to confront an Aes Sedai as Bornhold. Moraine hurried to Aldib, stroking the white mare's nose once before she tucked her staff under the girth strap. Rand did not need to look this time to know there was not even a nick in the staff.
"You are taller than a giant,"
Egwene said breathlessly, shifting on Bella's back. No one else spoke, though Mat and Perrin edged their horses away from the Aes Sedai.
"Was I?"
Moraine said, absently, as she swung into her saddle.
"I saw you,"
Egwene protested.
"The mind plays tricks in the night. The eye sees what is not there."
"This is no time for games," Nynaeve began angrily, but Moraine cut her off.
"No time for games indeed. What we gained at the Stag and Lion, we may have lost here."
She looked back at the gate and shook her head.
"If only I could believe the Drakkar was on the ground."
With a self-deprecatory sniff, she added,
"Or if only the Myrddraal were truly blind. If I am wishing, I might as well wish for the truly impossible. No matter. They know the way we must go, but with luck we will stay a step ahead of them. Lan?"
The warder moved off eastward down the Caemlyn Road, and the rest followed close behind, hooves thudding rhythmically in the hard-packed earth.